¿Qué pasa? I it's Sunday. My last adjustment was this previous Thursday. It's July 30th today, and I've done too much over the last few days. I can feel my mental capacity declining a little bit, and my head hurts like crazy. So I figured I'd do one of these now because there's I've been thinking some interesting stuff. One is that I obviously am not adapting to the situation very good. Not that I've adapted to life very good in general, which just means that I need to change whatever systems and patterns I've been using. And I've been kind of working on a framework for that based on perceptual control theory, which is the best explanatory psychology I've ever encountered. So I'm working on that feedback mechanisms because if your motor mechanism isn't doing the correct motion, then either your feedback and or your reference signal are not adjusting correctly, so you're not getting the correct error signal to adjust for stuff. So that's the basic framework. Essentially, the human mind is a control system that works a lot like a guidance system or cruise control system in a very simplistic fashion. And so working on that a little bit. And then also, I need to change something physically. Obviously, we've gone down to 2 adjustments a week instead of we started at 6 and went down to 3, and now I just have adjustments on Tuesday and Thursday for the last few weeks, and I've been having trouble with that ever since I did that. But also, I've been trying to be active too, and I've been doing too much, so I need to limit that, adjust that correctly. And then also, I have to get better at communicating some of the issues. Not that I go around telling people my health issues all the time, but it generally comes up. And I was recently at a get together, and one guy didn't know about the health issues, so asked about them a little bit. And it's the weirdest thing. But one reaction you get or I get, is that people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you look fine." So that's a weird one, especially when you say you have spinal deformities and stuff. It seems like people wouldn't react that way, right? Like when people are diabetic or they have Alzheimer's, people don't look at them and be like, "Oh, you look fine, should be good." It's a very weird reaction. And then the memory issues. I don't think most people believe that I have memory issues, which is odd because a lot of people respond like, "Oh, I forget stuff too." And when those people get Alzheimer's, then they'll understand actually having mental memory issues, but of course it'll be too late to be useful in their life at all in any understanding capacity by that time. Which also, I believe I now understand the appeal of horror type stories like Stephen King stuff, which I actually read my first Stephen King novel, The Dark Tower, The Gunslinger, which is the first book of the 7-book series. I finished it. I wanted to read it before the movie came out and see how it was adapted. And I love Stephen King's book on writing, but I never read a Stephen King book because I don't like his subjects. I don't really like horror. There's more fantasy than anything else. It's a dark fantasy. And his style is all right. It's a unique style. Just the way he uses words is weird. I think he used the word palaver, which I'd never heard before, and it means essentially pontificate, to talk a lot, kind of about nothing. So I used to use pontificate like that, and he uses palaver, and he must have used it 5, 6, maybe 7 times in this book, which I was very surprised about. Kind of weird. And I was always confused why so many people like horror type stuff, and not this isn't one of his horror ones, but I think I understand that a little bit better now with the misunderstanding about the health stuff. Other people like to see other people hurt, um, for some reason, some frustration in their past, something like that, which is kind of scary if you think about it, because the horror industry is huge, it's gigantic, and even though humans are violent, the horror industry I think isn't looked in that capacity as humans doing violence on other humans necessarily. It's just looked at as entertainment. But I believe that's probably some sort of like suppressed urge, which means fiction is really good because if you can kill people fictionally, you'll hopefully kill less people really. uh, it's that's an interesting phenomenon. So, and I think it's probably the reverse, whereas a lot of people think that having violence in video games is causing a lot of violence in real life. I think, intuitively, it's intuition, it's a guess, that the violence in video games is probably decreasing the violence in society because they're able to relieve that and they're feeling the need for that. One, some people it is just entertaining, right? I enjoyed violent movies before, uh, but now I really understand where some of those suppressed urges come from. Hopefully, that'll help in some of my writing, which I need to get more to. I need to get more focused on that. I've been doing a lot of other tasks. And hopefully, this coming week, I'm going to do my first training to become a reading volunteer to help adults with reading and some writing. I asked them about writing too, so I can help some with writing. So that should be interesting, and we'll see how that goes. And I've a friend that said he has a lead for an online writing gig for me, which might be interesting. And I contacted some people about potentially helping out with a teaching thing. I don't know if it'll really help at this point in my life because my finances are so messed up and I don't think it pays super well. And my physical and mental capacity aren't always very high. And my physical capacity is usually very low, and my mental capacity fluctuates quite a bit depending on where this bone in my neck is, which right now is sliding over. I'm feeling my physical capacity is definitely down. It's been down over the last couple of days, even. But now I can feel my mental capacity slipping, which is such a weird, frustrating, annoying, very annoying feeling. And so we'll see how it goes, but it could be interesting. It's with younger kids, like elementary school kids, and I think it's mostly focused on helping them read as well, which I think is something we'll see. That would be very fulfilling because I've liked the teaching online to the Chinese students, so maybe just local kids, local adults that'll be interesting to get involved with. So I'm going to try it and we'll see. The reading tutor wouldn't take very much time. It's going to take it would be like an hour a week. So it's not a bad commitment. Physically, mentally, I should be able to handle that, depending on the timing. But reading I've been doing for longer than I can remember, so it comes fairly naturally to me. So even if my mental capacity is down a little bit, I should be able to help people read a little better. Shouldn't be an issue. We'll see how the writing aspect goes at those moments. But that's most of my update for now, that I believe. And I think the biggest thing is adjusting, which is probably the biggest thing in life for everyone. Some people are very adjusted to their circumstances well, and those are generally people we call successful or we call happy, or the people that get whatever they want. They've adjusted to their context in a way that they get that thing, achieve that result. And I've adjusted very poorly to my context over life, which when you're feeling well, then it seems like, all's well that ends well. But when you're not, when you're in whatever you want to call it, when you're in the down part, when you're in the dip, the ebb, instead of the flow, then those don't seem to make sense. And if you can make it out of there, I think then you can have a positive aspect looking back. But the way our society is also inundated with positive thinking, I find so utterly annoying, especially knowing that all the research says positive thinking is not useful, which no one seems to know, which is really weird. Positive thinking is only useful if you combine it with negative thinking, and or if you don't necessarily want to achieve any specific result, you just want to feel better. So if you think positive, then you'll feel better, and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. But if you actually want to achieve something other than just feeling a little bit better for a transient, limited amount of time, then you have to combine some sort of opportunistic outlook with a lot of negative thinking, a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of not positive thinking. The not positive thinking in any kind of achievement or ambition is probably more important than the positive thinking. You obviously have to think you could potentially achieve that thing, but you don't even have to think you're going to. You just have to think it's an option, where you do definitely 100% have to think something is negative to try to change the other thing. And that is probably the most common reaction, two most common reactions I get to anything about my health issues. People are like completely don't understand it all. Like, oh, you look fine, you're fine. And it's kind of weird, which I understand now why people don't understand things at all, right? Humans are never going to understand on a wide scale economics because they can't see it. So all they can do is repeat what they've been told, and the system, human society, will never be incentivized to repeat from a power standpoint good economics for the general welfare. So good economics will never be popular in human society. You would have to have some different animal than humans. And then, so I get that reaction, like this complete non understanding. And then I get the reaction, well, think positive. Not useful, which is very weird. Now, you can make a case for it in that by feeling better, it could increase your capacity in some way to do better. But that's not exactly the way they mean. They wouldn't be able to explain that, and it's the weirdest thing. Like the positivity thing is caught on like fire in our society. Everyone thinks think positive, and I I don't know what the huge advantage is. I guess just feeling better in this moment. If you just think really positive right now, you feel a little bit better. That's the main advantage, and then it's basically done. It's over. But it seems like I'd want a little bit longer time period for some sort of benefit, which means that you would think not positive, and that would be much more useful. At least combine the positivity with a huge amount of negativity, and it's confusing why people don't like that. But I guess people have a time preference, which is talked about in the Austrian School of Economics historically by Eugene von Bauwerk, Eugene von Bauwerk, a very difficult Austrian name. And in time preference, if you're just positive thinking, you get the advantage right now in this moment. Humans always have a time preference. So rather than feeling the same amount of good in the future versus feeling the same amount of good in the present, people will always take it closer to the present, which I guess kind of explains the positive thinking stuff. And then Martin Seligman, of course, is considered the modern founder of positive psychology. Almost all of his research has been debunked by now. He obviously has a strong incentive to not correct any of that stuff, which he hasn't seemed to do. And so it's been very popular and highly promoted as researched in the United States, even though all that research has basically been wrong. So that's very weird. All of this stuff about learned helplessness being a conditioned response is wrong. It's about hormonal thing in the brain. They've proved that. And then Gabriel Oettingen, something like that, it's a German name, proved that the negativity is just as important, if not more important, as the positivity in any kind of goal achievement. So positive thinking by itself is actually negatively correlated with any kind of achievement or advancement. But it seems like that is not going to die out, that weird outlook. So I think I understand those a little bit better now with my new perspectives, but we'll see if I can actually apply anything in a useful way. So we'll see.